Who here likes paying too much for bourbon? Probably nobody, right? That's my guess.
And we're going to have these lightning talks every hour, so please stop by and pay us a visit. Right now, I'm just going to hand it off to Chris Chapanar, and he's going to talk about the Price is Right sometimes.
Awesome. All right, thank you. So, we're all here at KBF. Who here likes paying too much for bourbon? Probably nobody, right? That's my guess. So if you don't know me, my name is Chris, and I make a lot of content under Whiskey Noobs on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. And most of that content is to a camera, so I do have note cards, and I apologize if I ramble a little bit because not used to speaking in front of crowds too much. But most of my content is centered around the value of bourbon. I talk a lot about it. I do a lot of blind tastings and things like that. So I want to talk about the value of whiskey and how you understand the value of whiskey so that you don't overspend too much and you can learn from the bottles that you buy. So I want to be clear, though, I'm not talking about cost, because cost comes from things like age. It comes from the packaging. You know, an older whiskey in a really nice box has to be more expensive, right? But I'm not talking about those factors. I'm talking about the value of the whiskey to you. Am I holding the mic close enough to my mouth? We good? All right, sweet. So there's two types of value I'm going to talk about: objective value and subjective value. Objective value is kind of like the market value, right? It's the things that we can all agree on how good or bad a bourbon is. But subjective value is where you can really save some money if you start to understand it better and not have to buy bottles and say, oh, I wish I hadn't bought that bottle, right? Objective value is a few things I look for with objective value. I look at the body, I look at the complexity, and I look at the harshness, because those are things that more or less most people are going to agree on. It's not like flavor notes where, oh, this one has too much of that, but that's more subjective, right? So when you're looking at the body, how much flavor the whiskey's giving you, you're looking at the complexity of the whiskey or the harshness, how much alcohol burn is it versus are you tasting the whiskey? Those are all things that are more objective that people can agree on. Subjective now is like, what does it taste like to you? What does it mean to you? Are you enjoying it? And subjective value is where you're going to save some money. If you can really lock down the subjective value of a bourbon to yourself, then you're going to be able to save some money. So a good example of subjective value is if a whiskey's super approachable, but you don't like approachable, then somebody might recommend it to you. They'll be like, oh, this is really mellow. It's really approachable. And then you buy it, and you're disappointed because it's like, oh, I like a little bit of kick. I like a little bit of pepper. Those are the things that you can really start to understand better and then save money, as I've mentioned a bunch of times. So far, everything that I've said has one fatal flaw to it. Unless you've tried the whiskey, how are you going to determine these things, right? So if you can learn how to be psychic, let me know, because that'd be super cool, but I don't know how to do that. But I do have 2 tips for you that as you continue on your bourbon journey, you can learn more and more, and then kind of be psychic. You can kind of get good at predicting things. So the first thing is you want to get good at guessing. Want to get good at guessing which bottles you're going to like, because you're spending your hard-earned money on these bottles. The second thing is, once you've gotten good at guessing, you want to make the most out of your guesses. Because if you bought a bottle, even if you don't like it, learn why you didn't like it so that you can avoid that next time. Because right now, we're seeing a lot of hype in the bourbon world, right? We're all here for a reason. And it's so easy to just have something recommended to you and think that you're going to like it, and then you don't like it because you don't know why you didn't like the last bottle that you had. So get good at guessing. All I basically mean is understand what it is that you like. You might not put it in the same words as your favorite reviewer, but if you know what you like, even if you can't put it in those same words, then you can get better at guessing, and then you can move on to step 2, and they're going to feed into each other. So step 2 is learn how to describe it, right? Once again, you don't have to describe it the same way your favorite influencer describes it, but let me give you an example that makes it a lot more easy to understand, right? So far, I've been talking very hypothetically. I'm gonna give a real example. So basically, if you were to try 2 different whiskeys, you were to try a high rye bourbon and a wheated bourbon side by side. I recommend blind tastings. They're my favorite way to do that because it's so not biased. If you see my content, I do a lot of blind tastings. It takes away the bias, and I'm actually talk about that here in a minute. Some exciting, sometimes that the blind tastings totally blew my mind, basically. I highly recommend it. Can't recommend it enough. But you take a high rye bourbon, you take a wheated bourbon, you put them side by side, and you say, there's something that I like about that, and I don't know what it is. You reveal which one's which, and you say, oh, I like the high rye bourbon. I don't know why. I just know that I did. Then you go to your favorite reviewer online, and you see what they said about it, and they say, okay, this high rye bourbon, it's got a very peppery palate to it. Now you know, okay, I like peppery palate. And doesn't mean that's the only thing you need to buy. It just means now you've got this new information that you can use when you go back to the store to go buy more. So, I mentioned blind tastings. There's two different types of blind tastings. I'm not going to sit here and break them down to you guys too much, but basically double blind means you have no idea what it is that you're drinking. You know that it's bourbon, that's all that you know. Single blind means you have, let's say, bourbon A and bourbon B, but you don't know which is which. That's a single blind tasting, and those are the ones that I recommend because they're very practical. All you got to do, take a glass of whiskey, take 2 glasses, write down what's in each glass, slap it on the bottom of the glass, close your eyes, and hope that you forget which is which, or have somebody scrambling for you like my wife does for me in the videos. She's the disembodied hands, if you've seen my videos, that scrambles the glasses. And the reason we do blind tastings is because it takes away bias, right? And that's going to help you to get more psychic because you've taken away the bias and now you actually understand what it is that you like about it. Now, I am going to give you some concrete examples here. So far everything like I said, it's very hypothetical so far. A couple of examples. So Michter's small batch bourbon. Who here has tried Michter's so far at the 10 over there? Highly recommend it, right? Fantastic bourbon. When I first bought it, I thought, okay, like that's an all right bourbon, whatever. And then I did some blind tastings, and it was just killing in all my blind tastings. And I'm like, okay, there had to be some bias here that I didn't know about. There was something I wasn't aware of. And I'm sitting there staring at the bottle, and I'm like, I don't like the way the bottle looks. And it turns out that was my bias, and it was making me not like it, not like the flavor of it. I was attributing the label, which I thought it kind of looks like cold and dry to me, right? It's like a kind of dry label. It made the whiskey taste that way, and I had no idea, right? So that's not an obvious one at all. And I think that was an objective value issue that I had because I think Michter's is objectively better than I was saying that it was. With the body, very low harshness, ton of flavor, right? Second one, Weller Antique 107. Who's heard of that? I imagine most of us, right? And that's one that everybody's like, they love it. It's hard to find. It's rare. It's expensive when you can find it. And it's just not for me, subjectively. There's a note to it that I'm not a very big fan of. And I bought the bottle, and there's hype behind it. And I'm like, all right, no, that's pretty good. I think I like it. And I did some blind tastings, and it just did not do well in my blind tastings. That's a subjective one, though, because there's a note to it that to me is a little bit chemically. I'm not a very big fan of it. And I had no idea that I had this bias. Maybe the Weller is a little bit obvious of a bias because it's got so much hype behind it. But the Michter's, that's not obvious at all. I had no idea why it was that I didn't like it. So I've got a few key takeaways for you guys. If you remember this, I think it's going to help you save some money on some bourbon so that you can go out here and try them and you can think, all right, now I know exactly what it is that I'm looking for. Here are my takeaways. If you think you aren't biased, you are. And if you are biased, you're at risk of losing money on bourbon, spending money on something that you shouldn't have spent it on. And by the way, this extends beyond bourbon. This extends to everything, but we're here to talk about bourbon. 3, if you can nail down your objective and subjective values of the whiskeys that you're trying, then you can start to save money and cut down on that bias because you're now going to know what you're looking for and you can get a little bit psychic. I'm not claiming to teach you guys how to be psychic, but, kind of, a little bit. 4th, and most importantly, don't forget to enjoy it. I know I focus a lot on value, and I talk about this one's better than that one for this reason or that reason. But at the end of the day, we're all here just to enjoy the bourbon and to enjoy drinking it. Most of the time, it's not about what you're drinking or how you're drinking it. It's who you're drinking it with and the memories that you're making. So please, don't forget to enjoy it. Thank you guys all so much for listening. Cheers.